Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi, I'm Ismail Mubarak. I'm a third year student of English Education Department at Alauddin State Islamic University of Makassar. In this video, I would like to answer some questions regarding my course at Psycholinguistics. In this case, there will be 5 questions that I answer about understanding psycholinguistics. So let's get started. Both of these things between language and human mind have a strong relationship. In this case, language as a tool that used to communicate what in human mind or our thought as well as to represent our cognitive process. Based on Kaharuddin 2023, cognitive process refers to a series of steps occurring in human brain that enable the mind to learn, to know, to understand, and to store information. Furthermore, based on the definition of cognitive process, we can simply understand that refer that anything in human mind regarding what has been stored can be uttered by using language. That's why language and human mind have a strong relationship. Well, the first one is mental representations, are in short subject and structure in the mind with semantic properties. More precisely, mental representations are information containing physically realized structures in the mind that allow us to perceive, make sense of process, understand, and recall all stimuli. It based on Marina Kramer and Kristen Thunberg in 2020. From this definition, we can simply understand that it is regarding the semantic properties such as word or sentence in our mind that are stored. Mental representation is an abstract structure in our mind where we can represent our mind visually and verbally based what we have been stored in our mind. And the second one is mental process. Mental process is process of sensing and realized by verbs of cognition, affection, perception, and volition. Those types of verbs are transitive verbs, which means they need object. This means that there is someone who senses as a sensor, and there is something that is sent or phenomenon. For example, she believes she believes always, in which means that she believes in someone or something. It is some it is the example of mental process. The first one from Oxford Learner Dictionaries.com states that psycholinguistics is the study of how the mind processes and produces language. In this case, mind process regarding how our mind try to learn, understand, and store any semantic property such as word or sentence and store it in our mind. Whereas produced language is about how we use the language in speaking or writing based on information that we have stored in our mind. So psycholinguistics learning about how we produce language and regard based on what we have stored in our mind by cognitive process. Next is from the book K and Croce F 2010 claims that psycholinguistics is the study of the cognitive process that support the acquisition and use of language. Based on this definition, we can understand that psycholinguistics study about how the brain processes an information and store it, then supported by acquire it to perceive and comprehend language in the process of acquisition, the use of the language reproduce the language in speaking and writing, also perceive the language in listening and reading. There are some advantages of learning psycholinguistics according to the perspective of language teaching and learning. In my mind, in this case, I will mention four advantages. The first one, learning psycholinguistics help us to understand the effort students do in language learning. The second one, recognizing the language acquisition of the learner. The third, help the teachers to understand the condition and context of learning. And the last one, it can be used to develop language teaching method by the teacher. Well, the first one, observation approach. Well, the first one, observation approach, use to answer a research question based purely on what the researchers observes. There is no interference or manipulation of the research subject, and no control and treatment groups. It's just some kind of to observe a situation. And the next one is experiment approach, is a form of comparative analysis in which we try to study two or more variables and observe a group under a certain condition or group expression different conditions. The result of this approach assess to determine correlation between the variables applied and their effect on each group. So it is about the experimental approach. Well, maybe that's all for me, and I'm so sorry for all my mistake. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.